blue sky had to offer. He'd made the most of it, knowing that he would have to fight for every scrap of pleasure once he was back in the Nether. As a mere second son, nothing would be handed to him on a plate. He was nothing but a spare to the heir of the Aquae irises. A handsome boy who hadn't drawn anyone's attention before he'd left for his grand tour. All his life, his brother Nathaniel had told him he'd never amount to anything, and his sister Imogen had seen him as nothing more than a child to torment. Will couldn't help but smile to himself. Everyone had underestimated him, from the Rosas to the Tulipers, and now he was Duke of Londinium. He was never going to let anyone take this from him. The way the guards outside the entrance to the tower straightened as the carriage pulled up, how the page ran to lower the step and open the door, how they all bowed when he emerged. All the tiny things drove home the fact that he was more than anyone had ever thought he would be. Will loved the way his arrival cast a ripple ahead of him, from the way the pages announced his presence with loud voices up each level of the tower, to the sound of the residents of Londinium hurrying into the main chamber to ready themselves for his and Cathy's entrance. But none of it was as satisfying as the hush that descended over the court after their names were announced at the door by the head yeoman, and the way all of the residents and guests in the city bowed and curtsied as he and Cathy walked to the thrones. It wasn't long ago that he'd been seeking to impress them. Now all they wanted was to impress him. There were none in the court that gave him serious concern. All could see which way the wind was blowing, and how it was wiser to support him than grumble. Besides, no one else was even close to being strong enough to take the throne from him, aside from the Viola, perhaps. Bertrand Persificola Viola, free of the social disaster of an older brother now that Freddie was dead, was proving to be every bit the ally he had hoped for. Will had worked hard to keep Bertrand happy, and to reassure him that the Duchess had no plans to undermine his authority over his wife, or any other man's over theirs. It was clear that Bertrand was unimpressed by her, though. One comment from a new Duchess in unusual circumstances could be overlooked, but a second would be seen as a sign of a husband too weak to control her. Despite the tense journey there, Cathy played her part well whilst the main business of the court was carried out. Announcements given by Will and his Marquis, Tom Roeus Papaver, were met with quiet approval. He and Tom had spent that afternoon making sure that only the most innocuous matters would be discussed that evening. Tom had counselled him not to let Cathy speak at the court, but admitted how hard that would be to enforce, without the use of offensive charms. "Strange that she be so keen to talk now she's Duchess," he'd said in Will's study. "In the past, you could barely get her to string a sentence together in front of other people." "Life in Mundanus changed her," Will had said. Tom paused at the door then, his eyes shadowed by a frown. "It seemed so." Will felt sorry for Tom. When he should have been travelling the world, tasting the delights of Mundanus before establishing his own family, Tom had been desperately hunting for his runaway sister. Whilst Will had been rolling in the surf with his Sicilian lover, Tom had been going from town to town, casting seeker charms and fearing that Cathy was dead. What a burden he'd shouldered, only to be married off to an American poppy before he'd had a taste of real freedom. Will supposed the Papavers needed the money for Cathy's dowry, and perhaps to pay for all the charms Tom had used to find Cathy. And as Tom's hunt had aged him just enough for marriage, it was deemed unnecessary to give him a grand tour. At least he was proving himself to be a capable Marquis. What Tom lacked in worldliness, he made up for in bookish leanings, and he had a remarkable memory for details. His wife, Lucy, was nice enough too, and mercifully had excellent social skills, with a warmth that counterbalanced Tom's stiff aloofness.